attending this. The whole idea of today's presentation would be a very, long-awaited request that how should somebody from the architectural industry get their content in an interactive environment. And we have an answer today because last year we launched several features which help achieve this task very, very easily. And my main effort would be to showcase all of this in a manner that is understandable from a 3ds Max point of view, especially by using 2017 version and also the Stingray version of 2017. So both the latest version will help us achieve this workflow of creating interactive design by using your scene files which you have created in 3D Studio Max. And how you would take that inside Stingray is the main workflow which we will be talking about today. My name is Abhishek Krishnan, and you can reach me at abhishek.krishnan@autodesk.com. I head the media entertainment division from the technical side, and if you have any queries regarding 3D Studio Max, Stingray, or even Maya, I will be happy to help. So just ping me anytime. I'll be happy to respond. Whatever questions you have during the session, I can answer them towards the end after my presentation is over. And whatever I cannot, I will be happy to help you over an email, or we can have a talk post discussion on this. So let's start today's presentation. I have made few pointers and sliders, and you would see that my presentation is not very big. It's just about 2 to 3 slides, and it gets over. But we have several pointers which we can keep in mind while we are working for this workflow. It's not difficult, but the kind of workflow which I have kind of devised will help you achieve your goals very, very easily. So let me push to the next slide, which will give you an idea what we are talking about. So a typical workflow which you would have would be from 3D Studio Max to Stingray. Basically, whatever you've designed in 3D Studio Max, you would want to take it to an interactive engine, which in this case is Stingray. And the reason why we are using Stingray is because it's Autodesk's first gaming engine or interactive engine which helps you create interactive content not only for your PC platforms or your mobile platforms, but even your VR platforms, including HTC Vive and Oculus Rift. So today's session would be around how you can get your content from Max inside Stingray very, very easily. We launched a new feature which is called as the sync method from Max to Stingray, which reduces the task of creating or moving your components one by one. And I'll show you why. It's very easy because it's a single click button, and there'll be a lot of back and forth from 3D Studio Max to Stingray and with respect to this presentation. So try and keep a track or keep making notes so that you don't forget if you're trying to do the same thing back at home. So I'm going to switch to Max's interface right now. And let me pop that up as well. So I've done a split screen. I hope everybody can see it. Right now I'm just navigating my Max viewport a little, so I'm just moving it around. If you guys have any issues seeing that, just let me know, because I would take a little bit. I'll move the viewport slowly because I can understand there would be a lag when it comes to me moving around objects in 3D. So if you have anything, just ping on the chat box so that I am aware of anything which might be going wrong. Excellent. So I have this file over here. I'm going to maximize this 3D Studio Max file so that you can see it much better now. So it's a scene file which has an entire apartment, and with the entire apartment with me, let me actually zoom out and I'll show you the entire thing. So it's an apartment which is being done. We would like to call it as a New York apartment because that was the initial layout and design and structure. So we have a nice living area over here in the center. Let me find a sweet spot to zoom in. Yeah. So we have this living area over here. On the right, we also have a balcony and another dining kind of area. And then if you were to go inside, we have a bedroom and further like more details. And we obviously have an open kitchen. Now, the whole idea of this example would be to take the entire apartment inside Stingray and do an interactive walkthrough with it. So how should one go about doing this? Now, if I were to look at my materials, you guys would be happy, at least the V-Ray users would be happy. Now we can accept V-Ray materials inside Stingray, which means you don't have to convert each and every material from your existing scene files, which you would have done on V-Ray, to standard shaders or any other shaders, because now you can easily port them inside Stingray at a click of a button. So I don't have V-Ray installed, that's why you're seeing all the slots as black. I have a trial mode running, but I haven't activated it, but I'm just using it for presentation sake. So all my materials are there. So if you were to see, these are all V-Ray materials, and some of them are multi-sub objects, some of them are direct V-Ray materials. So all of them are there as V-Ray materials. So now with this process, what I will show you is how easily you can get all this data. Now, when I say all this data, it's not just the scene which you're looking at, but the entire apartment in totality will be taken inside Stingray very, very conveniently. So the way to do that is, let me just show you Stingray's environment as well. I have an empty scene file in my viewport. You can see it's a level set. I've already set up the file. I have just the light set in it. I have folder structures which have already been made. A couple of the reason why I have done it in such a way, because the scene file which I have takes about 40 minutes to be synced to this, because there is a lot of content, and in order to save time, I've kind of stripped it down so that it's easy. So I would do the syncing, but you would see it in a much shorter time than what I had taken when I did the sync. So if you are looking at these kind of scales, obviously it's going to improve over the period of time. We might add more algorithms which would, make it even faster. But for now, with this version, for this particular scene file, wherein there's a lot going on in this apartment, it's just not this living room. So trust me, the 40 minutes definitely looks justified. So without wasting much time, let me actually go back to the presentation so that I'm sure that this is what I was talking about. Sync to Stingray. So let's do that. I'm going to go to the Stingray option, and if you have been a Stingray user from 3ds Max point of view, you would see that these three are new features which you would have noticed. So this is the sync, the level sync method, wherein you can send the entire file to Stingray without any issues. So I'm going to click on level send all, and you would notice that there is a target folder which has already been set. You can define it manually, or you can do it based on the project which you would have opened inside Stingray. So if you have followed the Stingray project structure, for every new project you have a folder structure which kind of resembles like content, models, and then you can define your folder wherein you would want to have the entire content of that level. So the reason why I have named it level sync final fix, level sync 1, level sync 2 is purely to kind of help me go further with any kind of demos I would do. You can do it as per your projects. Auto tagging is the ability for every object to have their own respective tags or names. It is easier for the system to understand which object is what. So it does an auto tagging whenever you are bringing in content from Max to Stingray. That's kind of very helpful. Then you have the option of sending missing assets. So if it already has a certain amount of information inside, you can keep that checked on so that it only updates or sends the missing assets. You can also have existing asset options, and then if you look at the import options, you can import it with materials. If you want, you can have a material folder which you can ask it to create automatically. Same for texture, and then you can also import cameras and lights. So once I've done that, I'm going to simply say send. It takes a while. As I said, I haven't done the entire port, but then you can simply see it building one by one. I'm just going to open up it's importing the files right now inside Stingray, and then you can see the entire file open up. So I've maximized my Stingray viewport, and you can easily see now how things are. And so this is the living area, the balcony structure, and then you have the bedroom, and then you have furthermore inside you can see that there's another like a study room per se. So as I said, there's a lot going inside this room. It's very well detailed and very well made. So this is the bedroom. So it is a heavy file, and it's the full-blown file from Max. Like if you have designed a certain apartment, this is how it should be, and this is how heavy it can get. Once everything is structured, let me have a split screen again. Let me just check for any questions if they popped up. Everything is good to go. Perfect. So I'm hoping that everybody can see what I'm doing very easily. So looking at the split screen option, if you've been a Stingray customer, if you've tried it, you will also know that you can do live camera tracking, which basically means that it's going to sync to the view of Max. And it's a vice versa. So if I were to go and move around in Stingray, you can see my viewport inside Max starts moving. If I zoom in, zoom out, so it would adhere to the camera movement inside any of my applications. So even if I do it inside Max, it would do it for Stingray, and if I do it inside Stingray, it would do it for Max as well. So this is a simple process of how I synced data from Max to Stingray, and post the syncing of all my data sets, I did a live connection wherein I can see whatever I'm doing inside Stingray, I can follow it in Max, and the same for Max to Stingray as well. So once I've achieved this, let me go back to my slide so that I have pointers which I can talk about. One of the other things which we added inside Stingray, especially 1.6, we give you the ability to access the assets individually or independently. Before this, it was not possible because it all came in together, and you had just one pivot point or one translate option of any of the objects which you're bringing in. So in case you had multiple objects, you had to export them independently and individually, which would take a long time. So what we did is, in the latest version, we devised a way that if I wanted to individually access any of the components, check this out, I can simply select on that object, and that object is available independently without me having to worry about bringing them separately or exporting them out as separate FBX files. So this level sync helps you achieve this as well without you worrying about individual components or exporting them as individual FBX files. So this is something really amazing which has happened. So looking at the individual asset access, this is like a big boost and a big boon to all the users who have been trying this and who were really working hard in the process. Now your work is much easier. I already mentioned about the video material support to Stingray, which is a big bonus, because if you've been in the design visualization space and in the architectural space, most of you might be using V-Ray for your scene files and scene materials, so you don't have to really change or convert any of your existing data. You can just take that data as is and then simply do a level sync with Stingray so that you can get your entire content inside Stingray. Now, do note, if I were to look inside my Stingray's interactive environment, it's nothing fancy right now. It's very basic. Like, it is interactive. I can move around. There is a bit of reflection and everything, but it's not something which I would use it for production. Obviously, as a prototype, as an example, as an idea, yes, definitely for interactivity, but not definitely to something I would like to show to a customer or a client. I definitely need to add more things for it to look really realistic. So the process is really simple. Before I talk about the lighting and enhancing the look and feel of your Stingray file, let's bring in more assets. Let's customize a little. So when I talk about customization, I would also like to mention that we have added instancing support for Stingray. Basically, instancing was always there inside Stingray, but it remembers that if you have done instancing inside 3D Studio Max, it would remember that and give you that ability to have the same instancing options for Stingray as well. Let me actually show this to you practically. I'm going to go into the split view mode, and I'm just going to jump to my scene here, which will take me to the instancing zone. Now check this out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to simply instance this chair to about, let's say, I'm going to add 3 more, and I've selected instance here. Say simply OK. I can also, just to add a little more interesting, I'm just going to make it a little random so that they don't look all in one straight line. And what I will also do here is I'm going to select everything and duplicate that as well, and I will instance that also. And now I'm going to simply rotate this to about 180 degrees and probably bring it closer to my dining table. Now I've added a lot more content in this, and you would notice that it doesn't show up inside Stingray. It's very simple. All you have to do is you have to go and say a sync. So go to level send all and simply click on send, and it's going to update all that information. Amazing in the way that earlier you didn't have to really worry about, or rather you had to worry about sending these objects as FBX files and then saving it out and then importing it back, but now it's just a matter of sending it and syncing it with the Stingray file which you have. So I'm gonna I think it's doing some background calculations. I'm gonna wait for it. Let me move that around here. I'm gonna close that window. And if I come back and let me just find this asset in the browser, and if you were to look at this, this is the only asset which is available, correct? If I click on this object and find that also in the asset browser, that also points to the same object, which really means that it has maintained the instancing of Max inside Stingray as well. A huge bonus, purely because earlier they would have come as individual objects and it would have unnecessarily increased the assets inside your project. Now with this brilliant method, it really understands and observes each and every object, or rather instance, as an individual identity, remembers that from Max and gives it back inside Stingray. So that is something really, really brilliant and a big benefit to the workflow. So we took advantage of the instancing, but what about if we wanted to bring in geometries from outside, let's say maybe from online contents or online websites or creative marketplaces, or even your own created asset, maybe a Max file? How would you kind of bring about that inside Stingray, and what would be the workflow for that? So let me actually show you how that can be done. I'm going to go back to Max, and let me just pop to the asset library area, and I'm going to maximize the Max interface. In 2017, we added a new content tab which had the ability to access the Creative Market Store as well as give you a asset library option. Now I'm going to launch the asset library. If you are doing it for the first time, let me tell you that it's going to access the internet, and it's going to first request you to download the asset library first. It's an app. You need to download it separately. Obviously it's free, so you install it and then it's going to come as a tab. So now if I click on Launch 3ds Max Asset Library, I already had that open. Let me close that so that you can see it fresh, how that really works. So Launch 3ds Max Asset Library, a separate window pops up, a separate dialog box pops up, and then let me just navigate this window around so that you can see what all is there. So in the first tab, you have Autodesk Seek. If you have been CAD/CAM users, Revit, AutoCAD, you would be familiar with Autodesk Seek. It's a simple search function which lets you seek for assets within your projects. Then you have the Creative Market, which allows you to download content from the internet. Obviously, these are all structured, so if I maximize this, you can see that you can buy these architectural models from this particular website. So Creative Market allows you to have different categories. So if you want something with respect to the furnitures, you can click on that folder and it's going to populate what all you might need. My net would be a little slow, so you might not see any of the thumbnails immediately, but then if you're accessing it at your own end, you should see it pretty fast. If I go back to the architecture, you would see that I have this fairly populated, and with each particular asset you can see that there's a certain amount attached. So if you want a speedy start to have your assets all in place, all you can do is just buy one of these architecture interiors volumes and you will have loads of assets from it, which you can simply use it inside your own projects and populate it, saving a lot of time. So having said that, I have an asset which I have already made. So this is called as Boombox. So it's nothing but a simple fancy Boombox radio station. So this is a max file, and all you would need to do is make sure that this merge to import button is checked, and that's going to help us bring in the data. Now do note, just as a note, maybe it's the version I'm using, or it's probably something which I have kind of done wrong in terms of the installation which I have, because we usually have a not for resale license, so maybe I need to have a service pack or a patch which would help fix this. I've observed that when I'm doing this, sometimes my pivot goes here and there, but I'm just saying, in terms of if you see the pivot being a little mismatched, that should be alright, because you should not see that with your version. So in case you do, just let me know, because it will be just a matter of a fix which I would be able to get to you. So I'm going to simply drag and drop onto the carpet which I have. Once I have position, I'm going to just simply place that, and I'm going to use the move tool to simply put that up near the carpet itself. So I'm going to minimize that, and I'm going to close my asset library window, and going back inside Stingray, you can see that now it doesn't show up. Obviously, the only thing which you need to do is sync it. So level send all, sync, and say simply send. It's going to send that data file, data structure, and we should be able to see that pop up anytime. Since I am sharing my files and I'm basically screen capturing it and sharing it, it could get a little slow. So let me just do that again, just in case I missed it. Yeah, so yeah, there as I mentioned, see, my pivot point is slightly off, but it's all right. Let me just do that. I probably would have to check at my end what version I have kept, but having said that, it's there, and thanks to the individual object option, I can definitely move and correct and position in place as to the area and position I would require this to be in. So now that I have made it all possible over here, let me keep it on the couch itself. I don't want to move it anywhere else. I can go on to the next best option which I can talk about. Here I have brought the asset from the asset library. Now is when I will start working on the look and feel. And for the look and feel, you would have noticed that the Stingray environment looks alright. It looks pale right now. It doesn't look very exciting as such. We've been talking about real-time interactive walkthroughs, but then the kind of quality which I see currently is not there. But post my session around light baking, you would notice that this is what was missing. So light baking is something which is very integral and which will give you the kind of look and feel which definitely most of the V-Ray users or Mental Ray users can connect with, because then it starts looking like a production ready output. Let me go back to Stingray here, and let me go and check on light baking. So you can simply check on this light baking tab. If you don't find this as a tab itself, you can simply open it and access it from here as well. So light baking would be available. I'm going to leave all the resolution and process as is. I'm not changing anything for this particular example. I have a file which I have already baked, because baking again an entire apartment would consume a lot of time. We have given you GPU acceleration with which you can do an interactive baking as well. But having said that, to do a proper baking, you would definitely need to give it about 30 minutes for this particular scene file. So I'm not going to do it live, so I've already done that on a separate file. I will show you that. But in order to show you what exactly goes on when something like a light baking happens, if you have not seen it, it's really awesome. So let's click on bake. So when I hit bake, the entire scene file would go dark, except obviously the translucent curtains and the environment. So you can see each and every object starts popping up. So basically the photons or from the GI calculation is populating and lighting up the entire scene, baking the lights onto the object itself, so that it's much faster when I'm doing an interactive walkthrough or an environment wherein I can freely walk around. So it's baking everything. I'll try and move around it. It would be really slow, because obviously it is baking as well as letting me move around, or rather navigate inside the viewport. You can, if I were to go close to that object which is there in the other room, you can see, let me just frame that and probably zoom out a little so that you can see that how the color bleed really looks when it's actually baking. So all the reds from the environment are kind of bleeding onto the wall, giving it a very nice and rich look to the whole process. Let me zoom out a little bit more so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. What I can also do here is I can pause this so that I can navigate more freely, more faster. So I'm not changing any of the object's position. So I'm just paused it. So let me just zoom out and probably show you what's going on. So you can now see the bleeding of the reds on the wall, which is really nice, gives it a nice look. By any means, this is not a final baking process. This will be refined even further, but this is just to give you an idea that this is how the process of baking really looks, and that's how things really work. And these photons, the kind of photon mapping which really happens is actually for the light to be baked onto the objects. So it's still dark. I've just paused it, but let me actually show you another thing over here. So there's an important aspect which is called as the texels, which can be observed by, I like to call these more like diagnostic tools. So what they do is they help us understand how exactly these lights are getting baked onto these objects. So you would notice something very similar to how you have a UV mapping space. So these checkered combinations help you understand how an object is defined and how it's going to accept light baked on it. So if you have a very detailed object like this boombox over here, and you can see that if I click on these objects, these are all individual objects and have individual properties for adding or removing certain texel information. So each and every object also has got a texel information built onto it. So if I were to go down over here, I have the light map unit settings, which is obviously enabled for that object. You can disable it if you don't want that to be calculated. And then light map mesh setting has a receive option, contribute option, as well as a resolution multiplier option. So if I increase it to, let's say, 2, you would see that this has far more detailed texels onto it, which means it's going to accept more detailed light information on it so that it looks really good when you have a walkthrough with a lot more light baked information on it. So this is really nice. I'm going to just hide the grid so that you guys don't get confused what's going on. But yeah, I kind of like this checkered look in itself. But yes, this is the diagnostic part wherein I have kind of I'm looking at the light map texels. So I can go back to the full render mode as well. Also, what I can do is I can also go to and check out the diffuse ambient. So you can see diffuse ambient is where you would actually see this how light is getting baked onto the objects, how the colors are bleeding, and how they are also getting accepted onto these objects. So that's again a different you could say viewing mode or a diagnostic mode where you can observe how your light baking is really working. So I'm going to go back to a full render mode over here, and I can resume the baking, but I'm going to pause the file for a while, and I'm going to open up a new scene file which already has the light bake information in it. So I'm going to say open level. I don't want to save anything on this file. Go back wherein I already have the light baked option. So I'm going to simply say OK, and when I go back into this, I'm already on the full render mode. Let me point to this boombox. So if you were to notice, this light baking I did with a resolution map of 50 and a sample pass of 512. So it's a lot more than the default one which I saw, and you can see that it has done a pretty decent job. I can still take it further, I can still improve on the quality. Let me show you the diffuse one so that you can see what's going on. So the diffuse ambient, the earlier one was a lot patchier, and this is much smoother than the before one. So it looks more realistic with a lot of nice shadows and colors and illuminations all baked onto it. And if I were to go onto this room, let me do that. It has nice bounce of red light onto it. I zoomed out a lot faster than I expected. So yeah, you can see a nice color bleed onto the environment. Let me check this room in a full render mode so you can see there's nice lights coming in. So the scene has already started to look really nice and organic. Something I can start banking on. Okay, you know what, this is something which really looks nice, but there's still something which is missing. Let's go on to the next component of how we can improve the look and feel of the Stingray file which we just synced from a Max file. So light baking and observing of the texels is done. How do I take the light baking and improve the look and feel to the next level? Various aspects, various things which you should look at. The first thing which we saw was the diffuse ambient, purely because we saw how the light had baked very nicely. Yes, we could have still pushed it instead of half an hour baking, we could have pushed it to a 40-minute or a 50-minute. It would have been more refined, but I was happy with that kind of light baked output, and I stuck to that. The second bit which really will add more value and improve the look and feel is by adding reflections, and the way you can do that is by adding reflection probes inside the interactive engine Stingray. How should one do that? It's very easy. If I go to the create panel over here, I will have access to helpers, and in the helpers I also have reflection probe. Now do note, if you are doing it for the first time, I would recommend that switch on the gizmos, because a lot of times, or rather every time, if the gizmo is switched off, you will not see the reflection probe, because it's actually a gizmo and it's more of a way to have a cleaner environment when you're working with. So I'm going to click on the reflection probe and just click over here so you can see the reflection probe lies over there. I can simply move that onto the top, Now there are various methods and ways with which you can put reflection probes in an environment, in a certain room. There are a lot of theories. There are a lot of ways how people use reflection probes. So I won't go into the theories and the details of how should one, put a reflection probe, where all it should be kept. For now, I'm just going to add another one for this room, which should be good enough to give you an idea what's really going on with these reflection probes. The whole idea of a reflection probe is to get reflections on the objects and the surface by looking at the environment. So this globe is like a reflector which looks at the environment and takes the environment as a reflection example or like an image, and then gives you reflection on the objects which can receive reflection on them. So it's really nice and quick for an interactive environment. So do note right now how it looks, and let's go and bake the reflection probes also into this. So I'm going to click on bake reflection probes, and boom, amazingly the room starts looking much more livelier. Let me hide the gizmo so that you can see what's going on. So I have nice reflections on my tabletop. I can see nice reflections on my surface over here, which is amazing. I'm going to hide the grid. I can also see it on the sofas, which has a nice specular on it, and the boombox as well. So it has a more diffused, so the sofas have a more diffused reflection on them, and at least that is what it looks like. And then you have the boombox, which is also reflecting very, very nicely. So the reflection probes have done their job, their bit. Now let's add in more elements and how we can refine it and take it to another level. Right now itself, I would say that we are like 50% there with the reflection probe. We've improved the quality a lot from what it was before and what we can really do. It looks like now a good render which has come out with a first attempt or a second attempt. Now let's look at what we can do further. There are various tools, or rather settings, inside shading environments which we can tweak to get a good result. Let me show you all of that, and you guys can try the same at your place as well. So it's pretty amazing. So if I go to the default shading environment, I'm just gonna expand all the options which are available. So I have screen space ambient occlusion, I have screen space reflections, I have depth of field effects, I have bloom effects. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to switch off the bloom effect for now. So I'm just going to disable that, and I'm going to add screen space reflections onto this. So this is going to add more realism to the entire scene. So check this out. I'm going to just enable this, and automatically you see that it's much more livelier than before. So you have a nice environment. Yes, it is dark, but yes, we have ways to fix that as well. But look at the reflections from the screen space attribute which we just enabled. It really starts to look really, really impressive. I can obviously play around with the properties. I can improve on certain threshold factors. I can bring in more details from there, but I'm going to just leave it as is for this example, because I'm going to add a lot more other things which is going to give a better look and feel in totality. So after I have done the screen space reflections, I can now concentrate on the global lighting. So instead of using the default lighting system of Stingray, I can bring my own sky dome and use that as for emitting light source. So let's do that. I'm going to go to the global lighting tab. I can simply click on that, expand that, and I can change the sky dome from here. So if I go and I know I have a LA downtown map which I can use, I can simply use that, and you can see that how interestingly it starts giving that yellow punch. So here it's even starts looking even more better. So you have that nice orangish light seeping in. If I wanted to increase that, definitely I can do that by increasing the sky dome intensity. I can push it to, let's say, about 3, and it starts illuminating it a lot more. Now, my scene is still dark, so using the same global lighting options, I can also improvise on the reflection tints and the baked diffuse tint. In fact, I personally like the baked diffuse tint because it also adds in a lot more crunch to the whole render, or rather the realistic interactive environment which I have inside Stingray. So let me increase the reflection tint by, let's say, 2. So you can see immediately that it brightens up a lot. And then I'm going to increase the baked tint of the diffuse to another value of 2. So now my scenes start looking really amazing. They have that nice glow effect to the whole thing. Now it really starts looking like a final product render. It's definitely there. I would say it's 70% there, 80% there. It's something which, you know, I couldn't imagine doing it last year. It's now possible, all in an interactive environment. This kind of realistic look and feel, all possible through Stingray. So I'm just gonna look up on any of the questions till now, because I was at it for a long time. Okay, everything sounds and looks pretty cool. So I'm gonna continue and go back to the presentation. So once we have done the sky dome reflections and we've tweaked with the tints of the reflection as well as the diffuse, we will now add a new feature, which is, I would say, the icing on the cake. This is the auto exposure, and when I switch this on, you will definitely know why this is so important into the interactive environment which we have. So let's go back to the default shading environment and click on the plus sign. This is where you're going to find the auto exposure tab. So just simply click on auto exposure. You're going to see a nice bloom effect, flare, and it understands your camera positions and everything. And now all your scene files look really amazing. So it's going to automatically adapt to the exposure. So for example, if you find that, you know, near the couch you have a lot more darker areas, then what you can do is probably, I'm just going to zoom in over there, and then if this area is dark, let me go in towards it, and you would find that when my camera reaches there, slowly and steadily it exposes a lot more light into the camera and I can see it much better. And if I go out back again to the center, it again becomes all dark, or rather more occluded than before. So this auto exposure is amazing, because when you are doing a simple walkthrough and if you go close to an area which is darker, and if it's not in an auto exposed environment, you would still see it as dark. But because of auto exposure, it illuminates and makes it much more visible than before. So this is truly an icing on the cake effect, which I personally feel gives you a much more visual and stunningly looking real-time renders in the viewport itself. This is amazing. I can just simply take a screenshot and I can send to my client, and then I'm sure they're going to be a happy customer. Let me show you other rooms as well. So I'm just going to go inside other rooms here. Let me navigate around. So slowly. So this couch also looks pretty cool. Since we didn't bake any lights over here, or other reflection probes, this stays as is, which is okay, but you guys can get an idea what exactly is going on here. And this room also looks pretty cool. So yeah, reflection probes are a must for each and every room, which will give you a much better visual quality than what you had when you initially started. So let's go back to our slide and check out what else we can do. Last not the least, which I would like to mention, is more like a screen space ambient occlusion effect, which definitely can be tweaked further. So let's see what can be done for enhancing the look and feel even more. So I'm going to switch back to my Stingray's viewport, and let me actually take it to an angle which will give you an idea of the screen space ambient occlusion. So I did go with respect to a lot of attributes over here. I can cover a lot more. Auto exposure we covered. We kind of already have cascaded shadow maps. We saw how global lighting and how we can change reflection tints in order to illuminate my environment even better. I can add or enable, disable my fog effect. I can also look at screen space ambient occlusion in a while. We saw auto exposure, so exposure is taken care of. Screen space reflection is an amazing feature as well. Depth of field is stunning, so let's see depth of field first. So if I have depth of field enabled, you can see that most of the things are like now out of focus, and in order for it to make sense, let me position this in a much better angle so that you can see what's going on. So if I change the focus region to, let's say, a much better view, so you can have control over the areas which you would want to focus and the things which are out of focus. So you can see that now my boombox is in focus and rest of my environment is out of focus, which is amazing in terms of, this was obviously there, but now it adds a lot more value to your final look and feel and the render, of course. So check out, let's say if I jump to that chair and have a view from that dining area, or if I start looking out, then you can see how that really looks defocused and nice. And same way for this. So depth of field really adds a lot more value and a cinematic perspective to your renders and things when you are actually doing a presentation for your client or for your own work as well. So these are like really nice additions and tweaks which you can do within the Stingray's environment to give you the best possible results and renders in an interactive environment. So having said that, let's look at the last bit of how you can look into the screen space ambient occlusion, and let me actually disable that so that you can see the occlusion much better without it being defocused. So I'm going to disable the depth of field here, and probably I'll just enable it a little later. I'm going to go back to screen space ambient occlusion. So it's already enabled, but let's look at it how it really looks in my viewport. So I'm going to go to the lighting settings and switch on screen space ambient occlusion. That is what SSAO stands for. So when I do that, you can see a lot of jagged lines and a lot of pixelated lines. So that's purely to save time and the cost in terms of the performance. So right now it's performing at a faster pace because it is using a half resolution for your occlusion. So if you uncheck that, you're going to see much more clear, crisper occlusion shadows, rather occlusions themselves, and you can see how well you can see. So look at the curtains; they're all nice and realistic in terms of the folds which they have, and things look much better with the half resolution off. Obviously, you can tweak or increase the quality. I can switch to world space radius as well, so it's going to just diffuse your shadows here, so it's going to make it more blurry, so it looks more blended in that way. So you can click on world space radius and you have a much more merged look rather than having a concentrated occlusion effect. So once I've done that, I can go back to a full render mode, and now you can see that everything is as per what we had designed and planned. If you wanted your reflection on the colors to be a little less, you can tweak that. You can go back and change the same materials, or you can fix it inside Stingray as well by working on the reflection properties. You can pop up material and shader options and tweak it within Stingray as well, or you can go back to Max and then change it at a shader level in the object itself. So coming to the final conclusion, how exactly the interactive presentation is going to look, I can simply click on the test level and it's going to bake out all the information. Do note, I do not have the entire room processed with the reflection probe, so some of the areas outside of this living area might look a little dull purely because there were no reflection probes added over there. So let's look at the fact that, did we cover everything? Yes, we did. And now let's just simply click on the test level. It's going to take a while in order to process everything and give you the final exe with which you can navigate around the apartment interactively. It can be slow for you guys because since I'm sharing the screen as well as it's on a remote session, you might not see it in a very fast lucid flow, but if you try it at your own PC, it should be smooth as butter. So that's the auto exposure working, and then it's gonna give me the final look and feel. That really looks nice, and yeah, that's amazing. I can see the nice sofas. These are like proper production quality renders. I would say at least 90% there, if not 100%. I'm really happy with how my entire scene looks because it is interactive. I can walk in it. I can go into different rooms. I don't have to wait for hours and hours of render times, which I would spend on my render farms. This is my sofa. That also looks really nice. Let me go inside probably this living area. That also looks really nice, even though there were no reflection probes, but yeah, it did a pretty decent job. Let's go. I can also go inside one of the living rooms which we had seen. Yeah, that's the washroom, and I wonder where. Sorry, I'm just passing through walls because I really wanted you to see. Yeah, that's like the bed. Oh, this is the other bed. Perfect. So as you can see that, you know, there's a lot more going on in this, and for the kind of time which we just spend an hour, and you know, at your end you would probably spend half a day trying to do this, but the kind of quality which you've got, it's interactive, it's perfect for your customer or client or for your own workflow, and one click solution for taking your data from 3D Studio Max to Stingray and giving you a result which is by far a production quality standard and looks really amazing. So this is something which I would definitely love you guys to try at your end. Check that out. Who says that it's not a render from, you know, any of your accurate renders? So closing in on the presentation, I'm open for any questions and any kind of queries which you would have. You can reach out to me at abhishek.krishnan@autodesk.com. So let's begin. I hope you have questions for me. I'm just going to open up my chat window so that I can see any of the questions you would have. So let me slide that in. Can I work as a Revit sync to Stingray? there is another method with which you can do that. It is called as Revit Live. It's an online method. I would say Google Revit Live. Earlier it was known as Autodesk Live, but they've now changed it to Revit Live. So check it out. I think there is a trial version also available, and you should be able to get good results from there. Is that necessary to have lighting to the max file? I'm not sure if I've understood the question. Is that what will be the process for Revit file to be taken to Stingray? Will it be direct or via 3ds Max? You can do it both ways. 3ds Max comes into the picture when you would want to add a lot of materials, like, you know, we are taking the advantage of V-Ray, and we're enhancing a couple of things. Let's say you want to add people walking by, or if you want to add, let's say, a customized water fountain inside your design, then you would need 3D Studio Max. But if you're happy with the Revit file which you have designed and you don't need any kind of customization, then by using Revit Live, you can directly sync with Stingray, and it's going to give you an interactive option with which you can make and create walkthroughs. So I hope I answered your question. What is the highest polygon number that we can import in Stingray? I have checked this before. There is no current limit as such. It is the amount of polygons which your machine can hold or handle. I have not been given a specific number yet. I've seen if it goes beyond what a machine can handle, obviously that's when it starts choking. The question is, the modifier used in Max will work in Stingray, like bend, mesh, smooth. I believe so. Last I checked, there were modifiers which were getting supported. So I believe, yes, it is getting supported inside Stingray. Can we work SketchUp file edit in Stingray? If you can export it to FBX, yes, you can. If SketchUp can give you FBX files, then you can get it inside Stingray, because all a Stingray environment needs is an FBX file. So if you can export as FBX file, it will definitely work. Does Stingray support V-Ray materials and VR scans? I'm not sure about VR scans, but yes, V-Ray materials it supports. That was part of the workflow which I showcased. I'm not sure if you joined in late, but the session when I started, I mentioned that my materials in my scene file in Max are all V-Ray materials, and I can just sync it to Stingray as is. I don't have to convert or change it to a standard shader. I can just take the V-Ray material as is, and it understands and respects that and makes it visible inside Stingray as well. I'm not sure about VR scans. I will have to check back on that. Can it handle a large-scale project? The kind of projects I would say is you can definitely divide them into levels. Level 1, level 2, level 3. If you're talking about exteriors, yes it can. If you're talking about exterior plus interiors, yes it can. It's just a matter of how you have built and made LODs, level of details. If you've done a nice level of detail structure, then it's very easy to handle large-scale projects as well. Just a matter of how you would manage heavy assets versus LOD assets. So you have a high resolution model, and then as and when it nears or goes away from the camera, it can switch to a low poly model as well. So that's how typically large scale projects are handled, by using level of detail logic. When I import any model from FBX, I found combined mesh is coming, how it separates. So if you were doing it in previous versions, then yes, you would find that everything is combined, but I would definitely want you to try the new sync method, wherein if you have a Max file open, just do a level sync with it to Stingray, and it's going to give you all the objects independent of how they have been made inside Max itself. So that should not be a problem. So you have to use Stingray 1.6 and Max 2017 update 1. That's how you would. How are the curtains animating? It's a nice observation, nice question. The curtains were animated by using deformers inside Max. They were made as clips, and I used those clips as loopable animation, and I've added that. As I mentioned, when I synced my file, there were a lot of files which were synced beforehand, because I didn't want you guys to wait for an hour for it to be synced, because a heavy file with all that components was taking about 40-45 minutes, and I didn't want you guys to wait that long for that sync to happen. It's a one-time sync. When it happens, it's there. You don't have to sync it again and again. The only sync which you would have to do is only new asset which you would need to add. So that's the only thing which you would need to work on. So curtains are animated. You can do manual vertex animations and bring them as clips and add them and use them as is. I'm a bit curious about adding interaction to the whole scene, for example, opening door, light toggles, etc. If you have seen previous demos or examples of adding interactivity, they are very simple and easy. Because of time, I did not show them to you today. Maybe another session, or if you are interested, I can have a webinar directly done for your studio or your individual team who would be interested in looking at interaction. Interactivity is done by using level flow, and it's very simple. You just have to bring in an asset which is animated. We have to give in the ins and outs. Basically, if there's a door, you have an open animation and a close animation, and you link it in such a way that you have that logic already built. So it's really simple and easy, and you can add interactivity. And as I mentioned, these are interactivities which can be instance as well. So if you've done it for one, then you can do it for others as well. It's just a matter of, if you have common doors, you can do it for all. So that would not be a worry at all. Can this content be ported in VR and AR media? VR, yes. We are connected with HTC Vive and Oculus Rift. We have presets which are available. All you have to do is use those presets to port the entire file into a VR setup for either HTC or Oculus Rift. Another question, are we able to move objects in the frame from one place to another? Can we move objects in the frame from one place to another? If you're talking about individual objects, moving it inside Stingray, yes, it is possible. You can move them around without any issues. Can this software be used for media-related activity? I do not understand that question. If you can ping me on my email, I would be happy to help. What kind of media would you be looking at? Next question, can we import animation which is created with help of slice modifier into Stingray? You could try that out. I'm not sure if slice modifier would be still enabled inside Stingray or not, because I know for sure that a lot of modifiers are being worked on as we speak. The team works out on these features and they keep adding them. I'm not sure if slice modifier is there yet. Does Stingray work properly with Maya? Yes, Stingray works amazingly with Maya, Maya LT, as well as 3D Studio Max, all from 2016 onwards. So if you have a version which is 2016 onwards, it's going to work with Maya, Maya LT, as well as 3D Studio Max. Another question is, how was it possible to walk by using arrow keys? Was it just by clicking test level? No, it's a good question, and it's a I'm sure it's by a user who's already used Stingray. So I also found this yesterday. If you are in the viewport of Stingray, and if you right click and keep it pressed, and if you click on the arrows, not the arrows, but the WASD keys, so you will start moving as if you are moving like a first person. So yeah, that's a good tip, and that's a very good observation. So if you are inside Stingray's viewport and you want to move like a person in a game, keep the mouse button right clicked and then use the WASD to move backward and forward. And if you want to go fast or slow, use the scroll to increase or decrease the speed. So yeah, just mentioning that. And inside the test level, obviously you can use the WASD keys or however you have designed your test levels to work. It will work on that. Another question is, can we take piping intelligent model which are model in Plant 3D in this Stingray software? If the software can export FBX, then I would say yes. If it cannot export to an FBX format, then I would have to find other alternative methods with which you can export to FBX. The bottom line is Stingray accepts FBX files, so if your software can export to an FBX file, then it's good, because then your materials, your animation, your shaders, your lights, cameras, all that can come inside. Animation is possible with lighting, yes. The same way you would do animation for your doors open and close, you can do it. Basically, you can do light triggers, you can fade in, fade off, or you can do a switching it on or off option. How is it better than Unreal Engine or Unity? Fair question. If you have been using Unreal or Unity in your environment, I won't like to challenge it. I would like to just say use Stingray and see how easy it is, because it's an Autodesk product, and if you're making your content in Max or Maya LT, the kind of workflow which we have designed, you would have seen. If you have seen the entire demo, you saw how easy it is to kind of port things from Max to Stingray with a click of a button, and then you can do whatever changes I did in a few minutes. So I would say I wouldn't compare, I won't have this battle of whether it's better than Unreal or not, or it's better than Unity or not. I would say if you've been a user who has worked with 3ds Max, Maya or Maya LT, you would find it much more easier to work with Stingray as an engine than Unreal or Unity. Yes, you might be more proficient with it, but then in terms of how you would see it for a long-term use, I would definitely request you to try Stingray, because it's really, really easy in terms of the workflow which we have been designing. Another question is, do we need script writing to do an interaction, and do we an asset where we can use those assets to our project? I guess a typo, but I think I understand the question. Script writing, you can do script writing as well. You can write scripts, but the way I would do interaction for a simple architectural walkthrough like this would be by using level flow. Level flow is a visual language, you could say visual language, a node-based environment where you can connect nodes and build your own logics of opening and closing of the door when a person comes in or goes out. I will definitely have another session where, using the same files, I can show you interactivity and animation for lights and doors open, door close. Wait out for that. Or you can ping me, I can do a demo for you, or if you want to see how interaction is possible within Stingray, because it's really, really easy. What file size it makes after finishing? I tried out with an empty scene file. It gave me, I think, 270 MB. Empty scene file was 270 MB. So yes, if you were to export something like this, you would end up with a size of, let's say, 800, 900 MB. But that completely depends on how you're making your project. It could be lighter as well. So it's just a rough estimate. But then, yeah, it's always good to optimize your scene files. We need to create airflow animation. It's possible. It is possible. 3ds Max accepts airflow information very easily. So if you have simulation data, or rather a CFD data, you can first bring it to 3D Studio Max, and from 3D Studio Max you can have those flow lines go back inside Stingray. It's not going to be dynamic, but there are ways to get that as well. Another question is, as we can see through this webinar, your interior set looks a bit jittery of motion blurred. My question is it that jittery at your system also? And if not, can you please share your system config? I'm not sure if it's jittery in terms of the look, because When I move around, there is motion blur which is active, so that could be the reason why you might see a bit of jitteriness or anti-aliasing. I have not upped it a lot. So if you're seeing all of that, then I'm not increased the anti-aliasing quality, or I'm not switched off motion blur. So it could be just that. In terms of system config, I have a brand new machine which I got in the new year. Quite got lucky. This is the Dell 7710. It has an 8 GB NVIDIA card. It has 64 GB of RAM. It has 2.9 gigahertz of i7 processing speed, which can turbo boost to, I think, 3.4 gigahertz. So if you're working on a scene like this, you would definitely need a machine like that. If you have smaller scene sets, then yes, a low configured machine can also work, because all what a Stingray needs is a DirectX 12 enabled graphic card. A minimum of 2 GB is what it needs maximum. So if you have smaller scene files, smaller sets, then you are okay with a 2 GB graphic card as well. But if you have heavy scene files, then I would definitely recommend a 4 GB card, or you can pump it up to an 8 GB card as well. It just needs to have DirectX 12 enabled. Rest everything is good. So we need to create airflow animation from the damper. It's possible. I'm not sure if, what is a damper? Is it possible for you to write an email to me? I would be happy to help. We can definitely work. What GPU are you using? I'm using the M5000M. It's a mobile quadro graphic card from NVIDIA. AMD cards also work, NVIDIA cards also work. It's just a matter of your choice. I would stick to, if you're doing production outputs, I will stick to a 4 GB card. But if you're just a student or trying to learn from scratch, then a 2 GB card will also work. Do we need high-end graphic cards? The more the merrier always. But as I said, 2 GB card is enough. You can push it to 8 GB, 16 GB, whatever is available with you, more the merrier. Price for 1 year, I would definitely have the sales guys talk to you. I don't have the prices yet, but yeah, somebody from the sales team can reach out to you. Thank you for asking. Can we use our own cloud integration to Stingray for our ease of use through mobile device or iPad? I think this can be done. It's because we do provide the SDKs. So if it's a matter of integration, then yes, we can do this. How to render 360 panoramas? Exciting question. I'm not sure if there's any direct way inside Stingray to do this. I'm sure there's a plugin with which you can do that. So I can find that out for you. In Max you can do it, but I'm not sure if you can do it inside Stingray. 360 panorama images, I would assume, because you already have a 360-degree environment for yourself, because Stingray is 360 degrees. Okay, that was the last of the question. I hope I've answered all of them. If you have more questions, do ping me now, or you can contact me on my email ID. I hope the session was useful. I hope this was more structured. If you found any issues, or if you think I could have added that or I could have not added that, do let me know. I would love your feedback, and hope you have an amazing time this year. All the best, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining the webinar. For any additional queries, please write to us on amruta@adwebinar.com. Have a great day ahead.